Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk where I discuss creepy clips online. I created this original horror music to add to the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave your own comments, and when you're done watching, check the description if you'd like to listen to my music without the commentary. Now let's get into it and have some fun.
My name is Shelby. My late husband Antonio was the best thing that ever happened to me. Long story short, he passed away in a motorcycle accident exactly 8 years ago as I'm writing this, April 29th, 2016. What I'm about to tell you is something I've blocked out of my mind since it happened, but I think I'm finally ready to open up about it. Anyway, Antonio and I both grew up in Italy. English is actually my second language. He always dreamed of traveling to Greece, but we kept postponing the trip. One of my biggest regrets was not taking time off work one summer to go with him. In late spring of 2018, I decided to bite the bullet and take the trip he had always talked.
Have you ever traveled abroad? I actually have. I've been to many different countries in Europe, and it was a lot of fun. It was a band sort of trip. I was in the marching band and I played the trumpet in high school, and a lot of different bands actually. Now, piano is my main instrument, but I was able to take a trip to 7 different countries to Europe, Switzerland being one of them. It was beautiful there. Let me know in the comments below I also went to Italy too. It was a really, really cool trip, but let me know in the comments below if you traveled abroad or if you ever have and where you went.
Talked about. Being only 36 years old with no children, I didn't too much like the prospect of traveling alone, so I decided to book a cruise, thinking it would be more relaxing. I was actually in luck. Celebrity Cruise Line had a Best of Greece cruise that covered 6 cities: Athens, Santorini, Ephesus, Mykonos, Volos, Thessaloniki, and back to Athens. I tried my best to be excited about the cruise, knowing it was what he would have wanted, but I couldn't help but find the whole thing somewhat melancholy. It just felt wrong to be there without him. Admittedly, I may have gotten a little too wine drunk the first night after leaving Athens, but I felt I was entitled to behave less prudently. After exiting the boat and enjoying the city's offerings, I found myself drinking endless martini after martini at some nameless bar. That's when I noticed him across the bar. There was some 40-year-old looking man with long, straight brown hair and an unkempt beard. He wasn't bad looking actually, but his stare was unsettling. At first, I brushed it off as the wandering gaze of some lonely guy. Maybe he found me attractive. I wasn't gonna get offended if he wanted to look at me. After catching his eye,
If there's something unsettling about a person, listen to that. Don't just, go along your way willy-nilly, whatever kind of attitude. Like, take it seriously because something is telling you that for a reason.
a few more times though, I started feeling unease begin to set in. The way he was glaring at me was just so perturbing. It wasn't seductive or charming like he was trying to flirt or anything like that. It was literally as if he were trying to sear a hole in my face with his eyes. I finished what must have been my 8th drink, paid my tab, and quickly made my way back to the dock. By that night, my memory of that man had completely dissipated. The next city on the docket was Ephesus. My time there was essentially spent the same way, consuming far more alcohol than was acceptable for a woman my age. Other than some fleeting guilt, everything went well in Ephesus. Mykonos was next. I'm sure it won't come as a surprise to any of you at this point. Near the end of the day, I unavoidably found myself sitting alone at an outdoor bar, and that's when I noticed him. There was a man standing against a light fixture with his arms crossed. I strained my eyes, thinking my mind must have been playing a trick on me. It was unmistakable, though. It was the guy from Santorini. He was too far away for me to tell whether he was looking at me, but his head was tilted in my direction. Oddly, he was wearing the same exact outfit he had worn in Santorini.
Dang, isn't that crazy? And creepy. What would you do in a situation like this? Also, wouldn't it be horrifying to miss your boat out of there? Like, what would you do in that situation? I have no idea. You'd be stranded basically in another country. That's why I don't know these cruises. Because before, when I thought of a cruise, I didn't know they stopped from country to country like this. I thought it was just like a one-way trip all the way across the ocean. But apparently on cruises, you do stop at different cities along the way. And you get to explore them. But what would happen if you missed that boat out of there? Like, that would be absolutely horrifying to be trapped in another country, wouldn't it? That's why I'm not a fan of cruises. And I could be, maybe I'm not accurate in thinking this way, but I just think that would be a horrifying experience, wouldn't you?
A wave of discomfort washed over me. Was I being stalked? My palms began feeling clammy, so I nervously rubbed them on my dress as I lowered my head, trying to avoid looking in his direction. I could feel his aura radiating though, even from that far away. I couldn't help myself. I glanced back up, but he was gone. You might expect my body to have flushed with relief, but I was actually even more anxious. I frantically began looking around, trying to see if he had gotten closer. I didn't feel comfortable walking back to the boat alone, so I ran into a couple that was leaving and made some small talk, then walked back with them. That night, instead of retiring to my stateroom, I decided to explore the boat in hopes of running into that strange man. After scouring the boat in its entirety, I gave up around midnight. The next morning, I got off the boat in Volos, determined to solve this mystery. Instead of venturing into the city, I opted to wait at the gangway. I watched painfully for an inordinate amount of time as person after person made their way off the ship. I didn't miss a single one, but he wasn't one of them. Frustrated, I returned to the ship and spent the rest of the day by the pool. Thessaloniki was the last city. As much as I dreaded it, I had to reconcile the fact that I'd be wasting my vacation if I stayed.
That's pretty weird, huh? Like, she didn't see the guy at all coming off the ship. I wonder if it's some type of apparition or something. It sounds like that's what this might be, is some sort of apparition.
On the boat. So reluctantly, I got off the ship and tried to enjoy the city. Feeling superstitious, I thought it might be best to avoid bars and alcohol this time around, which I did. Instead, I wandered the streets aimlessly, admiring the architecture and enjoying the weather. And then, as if on cue, there he was again. He was a few streets down in the middle of the road, with his arms at his sides. Instead of being afraid, I felt a huge rush of adrenaline-induced confidence start to pour in. I yelled out to him and began walking in his direction. Instead of acknowledging me, he actually turned and ran. It was bizarre. He turned a corner, and I chased after him. I made it to the corner and barely saw him run down another street, and I sprinted to follow him. I turned the same corner, and he had disappeared. Nowhere to be seen, like he had evaporated out of existence. I couldn't sleep that night. I was relieved when the ship pulled into Athens, but once I made it back home, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling of that man that was weighing on my mind. I whipped out my laptop and started doing research. I wasn't quite sure what to even look for, but I thought recent police reports were a decent place to start. After having no luck, I stumbled upon some missing persons advertisements. I scrolled through page after page, and then I found something. There, in the middle of the page, was a missing person ad for a guy who looked almost identical to the guy who had been following me. I stared, frozen in shock. What was even more disturbing, though, was his name. He had the same first name as my Antonio, which was a cruel coincidence. The very first thing I did was call the police and report my sightings. The operator thanked me for my assistance and put me on hold. A few minutes later, she asked me if I was 100% confident in what I had seen. I told her yes. After an uncomfortable pause, she went on to say that they had actually closed that man's case just over a month ago. Apparently, he had been found dead in a boating accident off the coast of Parga, Greece. What's more sinister, though, is the date of his confirmed death was the exact month and day of my husband's passing, just 2 years later. I hung up the phone, literally shivering. I don't think I've ever been more terrified than I was at that moment. I began feeling dizzy, questioning if maybe I was going crazy, like had I imagined everything. Suddenly, another wave of realization slapped me in the face. The only city I hadn't seen him in, Ephesus, was actually a city in Turkey, not Greece. I'm not a believer of the paranormal, but I've spent hours trying to rationalize my sightings, and no conclusion I reach makes sense. My niece Maria had her wedding in Athens last summer, though, so I had no choice. And like clockwork, there he was again. I only saw him for a split second this time, standing in that same outfit by the bar, head pointed in my direction. To be completely honest with you, there were so many drunk people there that I might have imagined it. Either way, I vowed to never step foot in Greece again.
Yeah, pretty crazy, right? And I obviously do believe in a spirit world. Like, there just has to be a spirit world. I mean, how can there not be? And it's pretty crazy that the spirit was stalking her. Why do you think he was stalking her? There wasn't really any connections other than the date of the death of the anniversary and the same name. So why do you think the spirit was stalking her like that? I would like to know. But I definitely believe in a spirit world, and it's kind of crazy to me that some people don't think a spirit world is real. Like, what do you think is going to happen when you die? There's absolutely nothing. I don't buy that at all. There is definitely stuff and, you know, a whole world out there, I think, after when you die. And yeah, but that's just my thoughts and opinions. But either way, let me know in the comments below if you think there's a spirit world. But I hope you enjoyed this story and my commentary and the music, and I will see you in the next video.